No, that's okay, Andrea. No apologies. Would you like to give a brief report on that joint recommendation?
I do, just for clarity. So the joint recommendation is a product of the cross-committee work group made up of the WIP and the Minority Bar Committee and the CIRC. And we're in the process of adding the LGBTQ plus to the group, as well as the diversity team. We've come up with an initial draft of a report, a recommendation and report, and we're starting to distribute that to the subgroup and to also to the committees that we're hoping will jointly sponsor the recommendation ultimately. At this point, we don't need to have an actual vote on it. We're not ready for that, but as you know, there will probably be an executive committee meeting where we'll be able to process it next week. And the other committees are going to be processing it as well, with the idea that after we've processed the recommendation, the cross-committee work group can get together and process whatever changes, if you will. So that's kind of the track that we're on. The other thing I wanted to let folks know, which is very important, which happened over the holidays, is that there's a national injunction in place. And that means that right now, the executive order is not being enforced. And from our perspective, that's excellent, that's very good. And we're actually hoping that with the Biden administration coming in, that they may not even appeal the injunction. So even though our recommendation is broader than just the executive order, we're pleased that that's happening. So that's just a brief report, and I'm happy to take any questions if you need it.
Yes. Thank you, Andrea. And with that, we will move on to the committee reports. Annual conference. I saw Allie on.
I'm here as well, thanks.
Oh, there
Allie,
you are.
hi.
Hi.
Hi, Ann. Did you want to give the report? I'll defer to you, or I'm happy to speak.
I'm fine. Go ahead, Allie.
Okay, well, in the interest of, as Missy said, keeping things brief, we are moving ahead. We have a committee meeting scheduled in the next couple of weeks where we will continue to put together our panels and our speakers. So we're making good progress.
And we're excited. Thanks, yeah. Allie. Perfect. Andrea, anything to add? She's
going to her own computer. I don't think she has anything to add.
Okay. Thanks, Sharon.
Great. Thank you. And the awards committee did provide a brief report. The nominations have been received, and we will be having 2 meetings here in January to review the nominations and determine the winners. Communications committee, Nicole and Jennifer did provide a report. The deadline for the spring newsletter is March 15th. So if anyone's interested in writing anything, please let Nicole and Jennifer know. They're also starting a new section of the newsletter called News and Announcements. This will be for any professional and personal milestones and accomplishments, such as promotions, first run for office, etc. So any member can submit an announcement for the publication regarding that section. They do note that you can give your name. You can also submit a picture, but as in the case with the newsletter content, they have the right to use pictures, but they may not use all the pictures as submitted. Diversity. Is there any report? Okay.
No.
Okay, great, thanks. Governance. Don't believe there's a report. Okay. Legislative.
Just briefly, the new General Assembly in Pennsylvania was sworn in yesterday. That starts a whole new session. Any legislative bills that anyone was interested in from the last term are dead. Everything starts anew this term. And I'll leave it at that. We can.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. And I did see, I think Nancy is on. I don't know. Do you have any report, Nancy Conrad, for the Board of Governors?
Good afternoon, everyone, and Happy New Year and to a better 2021. We do not have any updates at this point in time. As most of you are aware, we will be meeting at the end of the month in conjunction with the mid-year meeting, and certainly will provide a follow-up report at that time. I also encourage you all to consider attending some or all of the virtual mid-year meeting. There are options for date specific registration or to sign up for the entire mid-year meeting. So please check it out on the PBA website and join us for at least one of the days, if not all of those days. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Nancy. And Sharon, do you have any report for Diversity Ambassador?
I do. I'm happy to report that Kathleen, known as Katie Kennedy, has agreed to serve as our next diversity ambassador to the diversity team. She is, of course, as you know, a BLI, and she is a fantastic volunteer for our WIP. She's very interested in connecting with the other committees and expanding her connections there and going outside of the silo. So I'm looking forward to working with her over the next few months so I can pass the baton over to her beginning in May. So congratulations to Katie Kennedy.
Yes, congratulations. I know she'll do a great job. Thank you.
I guess I should also report that we are planning to have a CLE with the LGBTQ plus committee related to the diversity team and trying to talk about issues coming up in that particular community. So we'll have more to report on that in the next few weeks.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sharon. Membership, any report?
This is Kathleen Wilkinson. I'm one of the co-chairs for membership, and we're continuing to try to build up our membership. In fact, Ms. Kennedy is one of the people that I've spoken to early on about trying to attract more young lawyers, lawyers such as herself. We've also been working hard to try to attract more members from the various affinity groups and to try to follow up with people after they attend one of our functions. If they're not already a member of the WIP, then we encourage them to join. So that's our report. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Kathleen.
You're
Mentoring, they said they did not have a report. Nominations, Andrea and Renee, I know that you have received the nominations, and it looks like you're working on formulating your officer recommendations, and we'll present it to the Executive Council in February.
That's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you. Promotion of women. I don't believe they have a report. Okay. Public service. I don't believe they have a report. All right. And the report card committee is currently working on selecting the profile interviews. We have the 2021 fall retreat. Suzanne and Gina.
Hi, everyone. This is Gina. Happy New Year. And thankfully, we're out of 2020 and our group is hitting the ground running. And I want to say thank you to all of you that we've reached out to for assistance in planning the program, which we really hope can be held in person this year. I know we all want to go to the Hershey Spa. I know I do. Just quick updates. I don't want to take up too much time. Our theme and idea is really a carryover from the program last year, which we weren't able to hold. And I think it's appropriate. Empowerment, celebrating success, and overcoming obstacles. So we're looking forward to bringing a program to match that theme. And we right now have some good plans. We're trying to secure Maggie McGrath, the Forbes Women editor, who was going to speak last year. And I know Laura Williams has kindly offered to help us reach out to Maggie and see if she's available for this year's program. So we're still waiting to hear back on that. We will follow through on that. And after the keynote speaker, we're going to have a story slam where people can share their personal experiences. And we think it'd be a great fun night. And then for the Saturday programming, we're hoping to have several panels. The first one would be an overcoming barriers panel, which would really feature a speaker. We're hoping maybe a PA Supreme Court Justice, and we're working behind the scenes to obtain a speaker. And part two would be more of a self-care panel discussion, and we are consulting with the Wellness Committee on that. and trying to also incorporate some type of physical health activity into that. And then for part 3 of the Saturday program, we're hoping to have a fireside chat, women in social movements portion of programming, which we would have Professor Kathleen Cahill, who is the author of Recasting the Vote, How Women of Color Transform the Suffrage Movement. She would hopefully be able to speak to our group, and we could have maybe a panel discussion with her. And then our final program for Saturdays, we're hoping to organize a public service event, and Renee has kindly offered to speak with us later this month and to assist us. And what we're hoping to do is provide an opportunity maybe for young girls locally to have some type of interview workshop or resume writing workshop in the theme, again, of empowerment. So lots of exciting stuff coming up, and I think I've overdone my time already. Thank you so much.
That's okay. Thank you, Gina. It does sound very exciting.
Excuse me, Gina, there's been an awful lot in the news about the problems that have occurred with the coronavirus and the pandemic, with women staying at home, and the extremely different impact on women. And I'm wondering whether in what you are dealing with as barriers and what has happened, whether you're dealing with a disproportionate effect on women in all walks of life on the coronavirus, on their work life versus men, for example.
Thank you so much for bringing up that topic, because I think that's something we definitely need to work into our program this year. None of us can hide from that reality. So thank you, Dolly. I can't report that we have anything specific to that right this second, but I can tell you that we do have a goal of working that into one of our panels, if in addressing that topic. I don't see us doing anything that wouldn't cover that. So thank you, and hopefully by our next meeting, I can tell you a little bit more specifically about what we might do to address that.
Great, thank you. And spring conference, Dusty, Katie, and Liz.
Hi, everyone. Happy New Year. We do have our speaker, our keynote speaker, and we're having a meeting in the next week or two to continue working on that. I think Liz is on as well. Kathleen has joined us on our committee.
Great. And your speaker, the keynote speaker, is Joy Gordon, CEO of Dress for Success Worldwide. If you haven't already heard, I think that will be a great presentation. Thank you, Dusty.
Yes, and she is a lawyer, so she's a great speaker. I'm really excited to have her.
Okay. Anything else? Do we miss any other reports before we turn it over to quality of life?
Book club.
Oh, okay, Judge Dmitrovich, book club.
Yes.
Sorry.
On behalf of Liana Walters and myself, our next topic person will be Judge Constance Baker Motley. She was a key strategy person for the African American Civil Rights Movement. She was a lawyer, judge, state senator, and borough president of Manhattan in New York City. She had a pivotal role in many landmark civil rights cases in front of the Supreme Court, winning 9 out of 12. She was a law clerk to Justice Marshall, and she aided him in the case of Brown versus Board of Education. There are at least 2 books, one written by her and one written by someone else. And so we thought maybe we'll do something different and just have a topic person, and you can read both books, any book, or any information about her, because she's so inspiring. And we understand this is COVID and era, and it's very difficult to find the time to read a whole book. So anything you can read on Constance Baker Motley. And whenever our chairs of WIP tell us that we can, hitch our wagon onto a seminar or wherever you want us to do this, or separately, whatever Ursula says, someone just give us a clue. And I think we have the support of Sharon Lopez and Andrea Farney, who said this person is just so inspiring. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, great.
Could I add something? I'm drawing a blank on the name, but the book that was for the book review last month about the first woman lawyer.
Yes.
Okay. I was not able to read that prior to the meeting, so I didn't participate in the book discussion, but I did make a point of getting the book from my library. My local library didn't have it, but they obtained it on loan from Clarion University. It's a very short book, and it is definitely worth the read. It was an excellent choice. And so I would just encourage anybody, if they can't find the time to keep up with your book choices right in the moment, make yourself a list of books to read in the future, because it was definitely worth reading.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great.
And Missy, if
Yes.
I may just add a brief announcement. As Sharon noted, we are continuing our conversations with the diversity team. Our January conversation will focus on expanding diversity in the law school process. As Sharon noted, we'll be working with the LGBTQT Rights Committee in our February program. And then March, we'll be collaborating with WIP. And we've already have several volunteers on developing our tribute to Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Additionally, I wanted to also note that we sent out the announcement for the Labor and Employment section virtual retreat in March. And it's a half-day program, and I am thrilled that our keynote speaker will be Jill Wine-Banks, who wrote the book, The Watergate Girl. She was an assistant special prosecutor in the Watergate investigation and the only woman trial lawyer on the team. So I will have the privilege of interviewing her as our keynote speaker, and I'm sure it will be a topic of interest to all members of WIP. And we may want to even consider her for a future presenter at one of our programs. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Nancy.
Should that book be on a future book club list?
Yes, we'll do it. Yes, whenever you want.
There you go. Okay, great. Thanks. And with that, we will turn over the meeting to Katie Kennedy and Lynn Marks, our co-chairs of the WIP's Quality of Life.
Okay, I'll start. Happy New Year, everybody. And one of the silver linings of this awful pandemic has been that the Quality of Life Committee has really gone into high gear. So for those of you who are on the committee, kind of raise your hand so people can see who you are. We've been really busy. So just a couple things, highlights of what's gone on since we all met in the fall. In December, we had a wonderful virtual holiday cook-off and recipe exchange. People were highlighting various cultural and familial traditions. I'd never heard of most of them, and they were just terrific. I'm going to make the carrot pudding recipe today. But if you missed it, don't feel bad, because Ellen Bailey is putting together a cookbook from the recipes that were shared that day and that people can still add. And thanks to Jennifer Coatsworth for spearheading it. It was wonderful. We heard from Gina just a wonderful review of what to expect at the retreat this year. And the Quality of Life Committee has been asked to work with the retreat committee to see if we can maybe ramp up some of our quality of life activities at the retreat, even though hopefully we're not going to be in any kind of lockdown at that point. Our worlds are still going to be quite challenging. So we might up our activities a little bit. Okay, Katie, to you.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I am trying to multitask and I'm on my phone, so hopefully you can hear me. So the interactive toolkit is in the works, and I am going to be working with folks on our committee to turn it into like a OneDrive type document, so it can be a living document and we can access it and hopefully have a link on the PBA website for us. I was aiming for March originally, but it's looking like maybe April. Additionally, we're here today to talk about resilience. So I'm really excited about that, and I'm really thankful for our amazing volunteers. I know that I've read a lot about resilience for today, and Brene Brown is one of my favorite authors and social workers in the world. And so 2020 proved to be a challenging year, and we thought it worthy to have a discussion about resilience today in light of that. As Brene Brown states, resilience is all about a tolerance for discomfort. What she's talking about is an acceptance that our drive, the insatiable appetite for comfort and happiness, does not reconcile with who we are as people. Sometimes we have to do tough things and feel our way through tough situations, and we have to feel tough emotions. So now we're going to open the floor to our awesome volunteers and hopefully those who are so inspired on our call today to share about a time where you faced adversity or challenges and you've learned and celebrated your own resilience in our profession. And I believe Jill Beck is one of our volunteers. Do you want to kick us off, Jill?
Okay, happy to. Hi, everybody. Jill Beck from Allegheny County. So I'm currently a candidate for Pennsylvania Superior Court, but in the beginning of my career, I started at Kids Voice, which is a nonprofit that represents abused and neglected kids. I think the greatest example of resilience I saw was early in my career there. I represented kids who wanted to go to college from the foster care system. And I think, as we all know, as college grads, how difficult it is as a transition from young adult to somewhat less young adult in your college life. And many of us were able to do that with the help and support of family, parents, or otherwise. And these kids who I was representing, of course, had none of that. At the time, the law was not entirely clear that these kids could keep their cases open with children and youth while in college. And it certainly wasn't clear that they could keep their foster care payments going. And so that was a huge undertaking that we started, litigation to ensure that these kids had some home support and financial support to attend college. You know, we're not talking about making them millionaires, of course, but one young woman in particular came from a very sad and troubled background that I don't need to get into, but she was very much on her own, living in a foster home that would only keep her as long as they were able to get some financial assistance while she stayed there. And she was actually our, I guess you could say, our named plaintiff, trying to change the law and get courts to change their mind about how these kids should be treated. And long story short, and there was nothing short about it, several years later, we did get approval. The agency had to keep her case open. She had to get support. She was able to graduate from a 4-year university. But what's more is she ended up going to law school. And I was so privileged after representing her as a child to be able to call her my colleague. And she and I did a presentation together at one of the Annie E. Casey Foundation presentations in Los Angeles. And it was, to me, one of the greatest showings of strength in humans that I'd ever seen, because she was being essentially beaten down at every turn, you know, being told she couldn't do it, she shouldn't do it, why are you doing this? And she just looked at them and said, I'm going to do this, and you're gonna watch it, and you're going to be amazed. And let me tell you, everyone was. So that is my story of resiliency, and something I certainly call on in my own life when I think that things are hard. I always think of her, and I know that I have it pretty good. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. That's awesome. And you know, with my history, that is something that's really remarkable and one of the joys of doing that type of work. Thank you. Julie, are you on the call?
Yes, is it Julie? You're looking for me, Julie Auerbach?
Yes, yes. Hi, Julie.
Hello, hi everyone. Happy New Year. So I'm going to start off with a quote from Rocky Balboa. But it ain't how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. And it's funny how that quote just struck me when I watched that movie, whenever it came out 10 years ago. But, what it's taught, why that quote is important to me is because it kind of just reinforced that when you practice law, and you're dealing with adversarial situations all the time, there are ways to do it that you don't have to be at complete odds with your opposing counsel, and you can be cooperative. And just because, you have a position to take doesn't mean you have to, turn into something that you really don't want to be. So it just kind of showed me that, how to advocate for my clients in a way that doesn't have to be overly aggressive, but also in a way that can, protect my clients' rights. And it just really makes the practice of law much easier for me. I do family law. It's very contentious. So that's kind of my practice pointer. It's not really one incident. It's something I've learned over the course of my career.
And I said, oh, I'm going to make myself go to this. It took them like 25 minutes to get from.
Thank you, Julie. I appreciate hearing that. I know we have a lot of family law practitioners, and it goes across all of the different areas of law that we practice in. So thanks for sharing that life lesson. Liz, I think I saw you on the chat. Liz Triscari, are you on?
I'm here. Happy New Year, everyone. So I wanted to share a story that I've actually never shared publicly. Only my closest family and friends know this. But about 14 years ago, I attempted suicide. I have a history of depression, and that is kind of the beginning of my story of resiliency and how I overcame that. Sorry, it's a little hard to talk about. It's a long time ago, but I think those of us who familiar with mental health, it's something we work on every day. I'm someone who outwardly has it all together. I'm someone who people come to ask for advice, professionally, personally. But I wanted to share with all of you that we all have our demons, whether you see them or not. We all deal with a lot of things that we don't always share. So my story starts there. It certainly didn't end there, thankfully. Through years of therapy, through years of finding the right medications, something I refused to do at first when I was first diagnosed, because I saw weakness in that, or shame in my condition. I have come to find that how to be resilient is knowing how to ask for help when you need it, and knowing how to take the help that you need. Part of my journey professionally was to find a new way to practice law. 14 years ago, I was living in Manhattan, working in big law, very stressful, not doing, it wasn't a career that was making me happy or fulfilling me. Moved back to Pennsylvania, started a career in public service and in government that I've now transferred to be in-house with the public utility, where I feel like I'm still able to, help people have clean water at reasonable prices, and as a, help to be a steward of the environment. But that is my story of resiliency And I'm sharing it with all of you so that if you ever, don't ever be afraid to ask for help. Find help where you can and where you need it. That's my story.
Liz, thank you so much. You're one of the first people I met at the WIP, and I have so enjoyed getting to know you over the years, and I'm so glad your story didn't end there and that you've shared it with us today. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing something that a lot of folks don't have the courage to talk about, and putting a face with those of us who privately struggle. I have anxiety and I will be a lifer in therapy forever. So it means a lot to hear your authenticity and your realness today. And hopefully it inspires others who are struggling and maybe know someone who's struggling, but it sets off that alarm that there's hope, there's help. And I know in our world, we have Lawyers Concerned for Lawyers. And that's a really great resource, but there are national hotlines and tons of services. So thank you so much for starting that conversation too. And I think one of our last volunteers that I know of who's on the call is Dusty. Dusty, are you on?
Yes, I'm on. And, you know, when you have to follow that, it's a little hard not to be emotional. But when you've practiced law as long as I have, you've gone through lots of crises and been able to survive them. And I think women are resilient. We are just by nature resilient. We multitask. We take care of others. We take care of our parents, our family members, our children, and sometimes we forget to take care of ourselves. So this is going to be a little bit different, I think, story. But when I was 6 months pregnant, my law firm imploded. And that was, my son is 30, so that was a long time ago. And I literally could not find a job. As those of you who know me, it was pretty apparent that I was 6 months pregnant. And I went to all these law firms and they just looked at me and basically said no. So I started my own law firm with a group of guys, and I told them, they told me I couldn't have a maternity leave. And I said, well, how's that going to work? And I said, okay, if I can't have a maternity leave, I will bring my son to work with me. And that just totally shocked them, and they didn't want me to do that. And I said, well, if you want me to come to this law firm, I was the only woman, I'm going to bring my son when he's born. So I did. I set up this, little office, and it changed my relationship with my partners. It changed my relationship with my clients. They'd ask to see him in his little nursery that was in my office. And I think it made me seem more of a person to them rather than just a lawyer. And I didn't know that would work, but my advice is to be fearless and to step into your power when you have it. So that wasn't the only crisis, though, that I survived. When my daughter was 6, and she's 26 now, I was going through a divorce, and I was a single mom, and she was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And that's like a life-changing thing for our families. And it had to do with work-life balance. And that was the last time I had a babysitter until she was like 13 or 14, because you couldn't really leave her with anybody until she was able to care for herself. So unless my ex-husband would take her, I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't go to conferences. I couldn't go places where you'd get support from other women. But I learned that sometimes work-life balance means that it's all family when it needs to be, and sometimes it's all work when it needs to be. And I know that when I was in the emergency room with her, that they still tell this story at Children's Hospital, I started to cry. And what I said is I went to law school so I wouldn't have to give anybody shots. And I had to learn how to give shots. I had to give her shots all the time, you know, to make sure she could live. So you have to find your own path. You have to be willing to be flexible. You have to be an expert at something. You have to be always willing to be your own advocate. And so those are my couple of stories about resiliency.
Thank you so much, Dusty. And I appreciate hearing about the different chapters in your career and overcoming different obstacles at different times. And, you know, the shots thing, I think a lot of us get that for a lot of different reasons. So at this point, we wanted to open the doors. If folks feel inspired to share, especially hearing from our amazing volunteers who, again, thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing about your stories. It just helps all of us understand that we're not alone, and we thank you.
So this is Gina Miller, and I hadn't planned on saying anything today, but after hearing from Liz, I'm very inspired to tell you a story that happened to me before I became a lawyer. And just to kind of set the stage for this story. So I was never going to become a lawyer, although it was my lifelong dream. I had no business going to law school. I had no money. I had no money when I worked my way through college, working a full-time job, and I'm still paying the debt on that, as I'm sure a lot of us are still doing. But I dreamt of going to law school. Instead of trying to apply right away, though, I tried to work as a paralegal to sort of talk myself out of it, since I knew I didn't have any money, and I figured, you know, I can work close to the legal field. But the more work I did there, I was working till 10 o'clock at night filing documents, and the lawyers would be down the street at the bar. And I thought, well, I'm doing all their work. I gotta go to law school. I'll just find a place where I can go to night school. And it took me a couple years to get the audacity to take the LSAT exam and apply to law school. And I did get into law school, and I came out to Harrisburg to go. And I was very perfectionistic about it because it was literally like my lifelong dream. And there was, in my mind, it had been on such a hard road to get there. There was literally no room for failure. I had to be the best. I had to be up all night. I had a full-time job as well. And things were going according to plan. I was the top of my class. I felt like, oh, I'm so in control of this situation. This is going to be great. This is coming together the way it should. I'm not eating well or sleeping or having any kind of life, but that's all right because this is going well. Except something happened that is the craziest thing. So I was one of those old-fashioned people. When I first started law school, I couldn't even afford a laptop. So I was like handwriting my notes all the time. And that ended up working out pretty well for me. I think I was the only person in my class that did that. And I should tell you, I entered school in 2008. So like right at the height of the mortgage crisis, you know, that's a great time to go to law school and start looking for a job. But anyway, so at first I was taking notes, just handwritten notes, and I did that the entire time. But that meant I wasn't taking my exam on the computer like everybody else did. I was one of the lone people that handwrote the exam because there's no chance I was relying on technology after everything I went through. There was no chance I was doing that. So I showed up to take an exam in almost my last year of law school. And I was the only handwriting person. So there's only me in one room and everybody else doing it on the computer in another room. And the professor who was giving the exam, the rule was the professor who's giving the exam shouldn't be there. Well, the professor giving the exam was there and saw me as the only handwriter, and it really flipped me out. Like in my mind, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to be in trouble for this. And so the whole time I'm doing the exam, I'm just trying to put this out of my mind and figuring that it's okay because, you know, he's going to forget and I didn't do anything wrong. I just showed up to take an exam. And I took the exam and I felt like it went really well. I knew all the answers and I was so excited about the fact that I was done early. And so then I turned in my exam and then I met some friends for a night out and they asked me what I thought about the questions on the back of the exam. Well,
guess what? I didn't know there was a back of the exam. And I didn't see a back to my exam. And to this day, I don't know for a fact whether there was just one side or if I was so rattled I just didn't do the second side. But guess what? I failed that class. I failed a class. And I got a registered letter to inform me of the failure when the new semester started. And also when I was, had just been awarded a spot on the trial advocacy team, which is something I worked hard to achieve. And so I had to show up to practice that night after having received this registered letter that I failed this class. And I mean, I am freaking out because, first of all, like, I can't fail. I don't fail anything. That's just not possible, right? When we all think this. But the other thing is, like, it's a bigger problem than just ego because I don't have any money to retake the class. There's no money. And so I tried to, I did go to my practice that night. I was not going to give up this spot on this team that I worked so hard for. But I also contacted the school and tried to appeal the exam because although they wouldn't, I don't know to this day if there was a backside of this exam, but they wouldn't show me the exam. And in fact, I would have to undertake this lengthy appeal process to appeal the grade. And I wouldn't be able to do my job, do schoolwork, and be on this trial competition team and go undertake that appeal process. It was just not, it couldn't be done. So I just decided that I wasn't gonna put my time into trying to beg for this appeal because I had bigger fish to fry. I worked too hard for something like that. And so I told the dean of the school that, look, I'm upset about the grade and I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair what happened to me, that someone walked in and saw me and there was no anonymity anymore. But bigger than that, bigger problem for me is that I don't have another $5,000 to give you. I can't graduate. Well, a week later, I was awarded a $5,000 scholarship. And so I was able to retake the class and I was able to graduate. Okay, it wasn't the highest designation, but it was the next highest designation. And more importantly, I was successful in the trial advocacy competitions, but I didn't realize it at the time. You know, there were going to be hurdles because of that F, and there were. In my first couple of job interviews at the big firms that a lot of people want to work at, I can't tell you, maybe 5 to 10 people told me at the interview, you have a great record. We'd love to hire you, but you're a wild card. You've got a random F. You have almost all A's, a couple B's, and an F. I mean, we can't count on you with that kind of record. I heard it more than a few times. It was demoralizing, but I'm super happy in a way that it happened to me because it taught me a lesson I think we probably all need to learn or have learned, which is that in this profession, the perfection is not possible. You can't control everything is a big important lesson, right? You cannot control everything life is going to give you. Unfair, horrible things are going to happen to you, your clients, and you have to just find the best possible workaround. Just put your time to what you can control and work as hard as you can, and I think the right thing will happen. So I'm happy I learned that. It's been a lesson that I've carried through me ever since then. And I would say even more so this year when the pandemic hit and I was not equipped to work from home. I was in very contentious litigation and simultaneously I was diagnosed with a chronic illness, but I've been moving forward despite that, and I'm here with all of you fine ladies and gentlemen. So I just want to say thanks for the opportunity, and especially thank you to Liz for inspiring me to share the story about the app. I still have a little bit of shame about it, but I'm not anymore.
Well, Gina, thank you so much for sharing that story, and it certainly has a happy ending. It's very good that you didn't drop out of the legal profession at that point, and kudos to the school for coming up with the $5,000 for you. It's an inspiration, and having a random F at some point, you're just gonna say, this is who I am, and I survived, and I'm stronger because of it. So thank you for sharing that. Who wants to go next? I think Jen Coatsworth had wanted to. Is Jen still on? Is Jen on?
I am still on.
Okay, great.
No, I actually, after hearing all the inspiring words, what I had to say, really doesn't measure up. You all are so brave for sharing these experiences, and thank you for just being so personal and really seeing this as a safe space. And I think it's really just a treasure that the WIP provides our members this really welcoming and warm environment in order to share their experiences and to feel safe in doing so. And I just think I'm so inspired to see all the messages of support that are being given to the speakers as well. So
that's really, really well said, Jen. I will tell you that Katie and I had talked about whether we should structure this conversation differently, and whether we should show a few TED Talks that we came up with, or share some of the literature about resiliency and grit. And we thought it would be better to hear from one another and to share our stories and to grow from them. And I think what we've seen so far, and I look forward to more, I think it makes us closer as a community as well. And I think Jen said it well in terms of a safe space. Okay,
Hey,
who wants to?
Can I add something, please? This is Jeannine Guth from Venango County, and this is going to be probably a little bit more comical than anything else, I guess. I went to law school at night at the University of San Diego. Started when I was still active duty in the Marine Corps. So I worked Marine Corps hours during the day, went to law school at night. Also, while battling a unit that knew that once I got my law degree, I was going to be leaving the Marine Corps, so they weren't going to be benefiting from it. So they would deliberately have meetings at like 4:30 or 5 in the afternoon, which would make me late for class and so forth and so on. Second year of law school, I was still working Marine Corps hours, pregnant with my first daughter, going to law school at night. Got through that year. Third year, I worked for half a year and then was on my own. My fourth year, long story short, my husband was, by that time I was out of the Marine Corps, he got transferred to the Cincinnati area. I was originally going to stay back in San Diego and finish off my year of law school because we thought he was going to Japan, but he got transferred to Cincinnati instead. And he literally came home from work and said, I'm going to Cincinnati. I'm not going to Japan unaccompanied. There are 2 law schools near Cincinnati. Call one of them up and tell them you're coming. This is in 1990. I mean, you just didn't call up a law school and say, hey, I'm coming. Long story short, I got into the University of Cincinnati to finish up my last 17 credits. The exams at the University of Cincinnati, you would get like maybe a choice of 10 essay questions and you could pick 5 to answer. And that's how all my classes had been in San Diego. So I thought that that's how they were everywhere. One of the classes I was taking in Cincinnati was federal taxation, which I didn't understand at all. I mean, everything about that class was just totally over my head. And I was just trying to get through it because it was a required class. And there was one particular term that there was nothing you could do to make me understand this term. And as I got ready to take the final, I thought, well, you know, I'll have a choice of questions to answer. If this one shows up on the final, I just won't answer it. Well, Cincinnati did things a little bit differently. And it was, here are the 5 questions you have to answer, and you have to answer all 5. And wouldn't you know, one of them was on this term that I was clueless. So I started to write, and I wrote like 2 or 3 sentences, and then I stopped myself and I literally wrote on my exam to the professor, I never did understand this concept. I hoped it wouldn't be on the test, but here it is. I'm not going to waste your time anymore writing nonsense. However, if anything I wrote above this counts, please give me credit for it. And God bless the man, I got a C and passed the class. But I was just thinking of the experience that the other attorney had with, you know, missing the back of her exam. So, you know, I just thought I would share that.
Absolutely. Really glad that you did. I'm sure a lot of people have stories like that, and yours had a happy ending. So good for that. Good for you. Good for you. Thank you. Who wants to go next?
Lynn, this is Tara.
Oh, good. Tara, go ahead.
Yeah, I wasn't going to speak, but I think Gina and I are similar that after hearing everybody else, there's the inspiration. So I have my own practice. I started it in 2018, and it was hard, but you know, coasting along for a little while, finally start to think, oh, I know what I'm doing. And then COVID hits. almost at the exact 2-year mark. And when I say that, I honestly thought in the course of less than a week, maybe a third of my clients had been laid off and said, we can't pay you, we can't re-retain, we can't pay our invoices. And now we're working from home, and I have rent and payroll and all that good stuff. And just thinking, how in the world after 2 years of this, and it was not easy to get to 2 years in the first place. In less than a week, all of this, I could lose my entire practice. And I'm still not entirely over that part yet, but really what was the turning point, so to speak, it wasn't even necessarily anything I did. It was being able to have a community like this, like PBA, like the members in WIP or the solo and small firm committee, who really were going through the same thing and understood it. And even just having that emotional support was really what made me think, okay, don't start job searching right now. It will pass. There have been recessions before. People do come back. I do family law, so eventually it's all going to pick back up. And so for me, it really did emphasize the importance of having a space like this and being able to tell people when they say, oh, how are you doing? Like, really? I don't know. I'm not really okay at the moment. And fortunately now, almost, I can't believe I'm saying this, almost a year since COVID hit, I do still have my practice, and it did pick back up. But so for me, it really wasn't anything that I did on my own. The support of this community has been critical in being able to get through 2020 and look forward.
Thank you so much, Tara. That was, you're inspiring anyway. Tara, if you don't know, chairs the Quality of Life Committee of the whole PBA, not just WIP. I'm just going to speak really briefly, and then if we have time, I just thought of something to say, and we have time, we're going to 2 other people. So a few years ago, I was diagnosed with early stage leukemia, and I teach a class, and where I teach, they said I could take the semester off. Maybe I should do that. And I thought that to do that would basically be that I was giving in to the disease, and I certainly was not feeling ill at all. And because I teach a class with some of retired Judge Phyllis Beck, I figured if I'm not feeling well, she certainly could take over. But I did some reading about resilience and grit and gratitude. And one of the things which I learned was the importance of kind of looking for silver linings and being grateful. And one of the things which I've been doing, which I recommend to any of you if you're not doing it, and it wasn't my idea, I read it somewhere, was every night when I go to bed, when my head hits the pillow, I think of 3 things that day that I'm grateful for. And they can be big things, like tonight, I'm sure I'm going to say I'm grateful for the Georgia results. It can be small things like, my husband didn't eat all of the chocolate chip ice cream that day. So there is, well, maybe that's not so small, maybe that's big. But what it does is it has focused me on what I'm positive about that day, as opposed to the, everything. And it has been such a wonderful lesson to me during this pandemic to know that that's going to be the way that I end my day. And I often think of more than 3. So I wasn't planning to share that, but when I heard everybody's stories, I thought that I would as well. Alyson, you wanted to say something? It was not a story, but you wrote me you wanted to say something.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Lynn. This is Alyson Oswald, and I am in the Philly area. I technically live in Chester County. I just wanted to compliment the Quality of Life Committee for being spot on with such an important topic for all of us right now. It's important not just for, and we all know this, for women or women lawyers, it's everywhere. You know, a year ago, even before the pandemic, I was speaking to the emotional support teacher in my son's school, and resilience has become a priority district-wide. I live in an area where we're in the Triscari Easttown School District, routinely in the top 5 school districts in the Commonwealth. And we now have a resiliency initiative, elementary school wide, because they're finding that kids lack grit and resilience. And they don't really know why, but it's enough educators have seen this that they're putting their heads together that tonight, I'm looking at my phone, there's a discussion tonight that's available to parents on our resiliency initiative and how our schools are teaching tools to foster resilience and combat anxiety. And I think that all of us and the brave people who've shared their stories today have inspired me to share age-appropriate stories of failure and or difficulties and challenges and picking ourselves up or soldiering through and moving forward, like Julie said, like Rocky. I think it's important for our kids to know that. And I also think that that gratitude idea is a great idea. I'm thinking that's another thing that I can teach my family, and maybe we can, you know, teach, whether it's junior associates or other people in our profession, you know, having these conversations I just think is important. And thanks for bringing this, you know, putting this on. It's been great.
One of the, thank you so much, Alyson, said very well. I think one of the things which has stood up for me, and I don't know if it has been for you, is all of you have spoken so far always seem to like have it all together. You know, everybody always seems so like perfect. And it reminds me of the first person who said, was it, I think who said, maybe it was Liz, who said that we all have our demons. And I think that that is something that we all share, and it was good that we shared it with one another today. So we are going to continue this discussion, I think, in our work at other times, but we really did want to highlight today as we start our calendar year, and let's hope that next year is better for everybody in so many ways. And I look forward to future meetings at WIP. So I also have to end with one huge thank you to Ursula. So can everybody give a round of applause to her as well as the chairs of our committee? Okay, thank you. Happy New Year.
Thank you, everyone. Happy New Year. This was great.
New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Happy
New Year.
Well
Good
done.
job.
Very well done.
Take care. Great job.
Bye-bye.